It is a great honor and a privilege to introduce Miriam Griver. We're here in your beautiful home in Jerusalem. And Miriam, you are making a documentary on the importance of the DP camps.
Correct. About the 4 years between the Shoah and the Tkumat Eretz Israel. After my father came out of Auschwitz, he was on the march of the death, and he was brought to Flossenburg, and from Flossenburg he was marched to Pocking, Waldstadt. As he was, they all worked there. There were foreigners that worked there. That was in German air base, and the Americans already bombarded the air base every day, and those poor people who were already very exhausted, and they still had to fill out the bombing of the Americans, and so the Luftwaffe, the German airplanes could go up on the air and fight the Americans. And finally, the 65th Army came into Pocking, and the first thing they stopped at was at the pile of the dead people. And they couldn't believe their eyes what they have seen. And they looked at the dead people and they were absolutely amazed. This is the first time they saw something like that. And as they were looking at the people, my father, who was up on top, he was just thrown on top of the dead people the night before, and he blinked with he saw the American people. He couldn't talk anymore, but he blinked with his eye to show them that he's still alive. And one of the soldiers saw him blinking his eye, and he said, "Let's stop doing everything and let's take him into the hospital to see if we can save him." And the person that saved it was one of the soldiers, is Sidney Schachmeister, a Jewish soldier, and he took my father to the hospital, and that's how he was saved. After he was saved, the first thing he did was to find a young Jewish Hungarian man who said that he's going to go back to Hungary, and he's going to find his wife and children. And my father asked him, "Please find my wife and children, because I vowed never to go back to Hungary, because the Hungarians were," he said, "even worse than the Germans." So that young man went back. Unfortunately, he did not find. They all passed away in the ghetto, and he came to my mother, and he said to her, your husband is alive, and he's in Germany. He's in Pocking, Waldstadt, and he would like you to come with the children to him, because he wants to rehabilitate the people in Germany that came out of all the camps. And so my mother didn't believe him. She thought the poor guy he just heard that he lost his wife and children, he's not all there. But just to make sure, she went to Germany. She saw my father. The face was just the same face, but of course his body wasn't the same. And she said they talked into the night, and finally she was very angry at him. She said, "Don't you remember that you have 2 daughters? don't you want to know if they are alive or not? And he said, of course I do, but I was hoping that you would say it. I was afraid to ask. And so she told him they are fine, they'll be their grandmother. And so he asked her, would you please go back, bring the children, and let's do the work here in the DP camp that we have to do. And that's what my mother did. She came back, she took us, and we went to Germany. When our train arrived in Germany, not only my father came out to greet, but almost the whole camp came out to greet. And the scenery, the camp people still were not completely there. There were very thin ones. They were very blown up. It was like from a scene from Dante, but they were all crying and from happiness that they see a whole family in those days come united. They couldn't believe it, and it really gave them hope for the future. Maybe they find parts of their family, and that's how we came to Poking Wallstatt. And my parents started to rehabilitate these people. My father was appointed after he came out of the hospital. He was a rabbi in profession, so he was appointed as the head of the DP camp by the Americans. And here is my father. This is Yitzhak Golombek and Max Schmerler, which at the end, the three of us all made Aliyah to Israel with their family. My father married both of them in the camp, and of course they had children. And my father married their children in Israel, so he married the second generation in Israel. This is Max Weinstein, and this is Cooper, and both of them went to Canada. Of course, my parents kept in touch with them all the time. This is the office. We lived in the apartment of the mayor of Poking, and the Americans threw him out of there and gave him the house next to it, where his worker used to live. And of course he was very angry, but that was life. And this is the house, and on the bottom we had the synagogue and the office. And this is on Shavuot. The people from the camp came and decorated the house for Shavuot. In the camp, this is how a part of the camp looked like. It was single homes, and then they had big homes, and the slaves, of course, everybody was a slave over there. They hardly had any place to live. But the Luftwaffe, the airport, the pilots had decent accommodations, which our people took over once the Luftwaffe was they left the place. And so the DP people took over the accommodations. In the camps we had a seminar of Tachkemoni, and we had not only Tachkemoni, we had different companies, different
groups,
different groups of people. Everybody who was a Beitarist was in the Beitar, who was in the Tachkemoni was in Tachkemoni, and so forth. And besides, we had very famous rabbis live in the camps, and they did. They established a kind of little yeshiva and big yeshiva in the camp. We had Rabbi Halberstam, we had Rabbi, he was later the rabbi of Netanya, so they all established schools for the children who came out of the camps, and of course helped out the people that came out of the camps and asked for their help. We had, the camp was given they came from UNRWA, but it was a different UNRWA that we know nowadays. They came, they gave packages to the people in the camp of food, and mainly of chocolate and all kind of goodies. And we had, that's the UNRWA, we had the JDC who came to help. We had Ort from Israel. We had, in the big place where the planes were hiding for the night, those big places, they made out of them a school of teaching all kinds of teaching the people to be shoemakers, to be chayatim, to be clothes makers, to be pottery makers, all kinds of things that they could teach each other. They taught each other. So when they asked for their passports, for example, if they wanted to go to America, the Americans asked them to fill out in your they didn't want the people from the camps in America, but they did send them papers, and one of the it said, how are you going to support your family in America? And of course they had to have professions, and those professions were very important professions in those days. We are talking about 1945 and 1949 and 1950. So those were still very important professions. And so they wrote to them, people that went to Canada, to America, to Australia, that here I have a profession, and all came from Israel, and they gave them the certificates that they are very good in their professions. Besides that, there were all kinds of emissaries from Israel to help out the people in the camps. So the people in the camps had all kinds of wonderful help, physical help, but moral help, psychological help was almost non-existent, because the psychologists did not know exactly how to talk to those people, how to help them. They tried very much, but the truth is that most of the people helped out each other. And the main thing was that those people really, after they were not called, never called in their names, and there were numbers, and they were just people that you didn't see. They all told each other their names, and they all had the inner strength, and they wanted to be humans again, and they looked for their families, and very few of them found some sisters, some brothers. The older generation were hardly found their mothers or fathers, and their aunts and uncles, they were hardly there. And they, of course, were looking for human touch, and they were looking for somebody to be very near to them, to remind them of their families. And so there were lots of weddings in the camp, and that was a very lovely situation. I'll show you some of the weddings that my mother did. Here's a wedding that my father is doing, a chuppah that my father is doing, and okay, this is later. Here's a chuppah that my father is doing, and I'll show you a very unique wedding, because my father married. This is Machusha, this is the bridesmaid, and this is this is Hanka, the bridesmaid, and this is Machusha that my father married, and Machusha was a wonderful seamstress, and she took the parachutes of the Americans and she made the bridesmaid's dress. And here's my sister Yehudit and myself, and she made from the parachute, she made the two dresses for us, for the bridesmaids. And here is my mother, and the three of them were wonderful friends. And of course, here are their husbands that I told you. This is Yitzchak Golombek, who married Machusha, the seamstress, and here's Max Schmerler, that married Hanka, and this is his wedding. And that was a very unusual wedding, and my mother made a beautiful here she made a beautiful in the hall, in the big hall where the airplanes used to be. She made the wedding, and here she is with my mother and the two of us going to the chuppah. And this is after the chuppah with friends from the camp. And so, as I told you, the three of us, more or less, in 1949, we came to Israel, and we continued the friendship. My father made the wedding of the children of Machusha and Yitzchak Golombek in 1976. My father made the wedding of the second generation. He married their parents, and their parents asked my father, "Would you please marry my children?" And so that's what he did. This is a picture about a year before we left, in 1947, end of 47, beginning of 48. I'll show you another picture of my sister Yehudit. Unfortunately, she passed away 2 years ago, and myself. And for the first time in my life, I was already 6-7 years old here, and for the first time in my life, I got a a doll and a buggy. So I was very proud of that. I never had a childhood. I was born into the war, and I never had a childhood. As I remember myself very old and very responsible person. Rabbi Herzog came to Poking, and I don't have the picture of him being in Poking, but after we made Aliyah in 49, he asked us to come together, the group of people that he met in Poking, and this is in Rehovot. We met him in Rehovot, and here are the people from the camp that came to meet Rabbi Herzog in Rehovot in Israel. This is the Munkacher Rebbe, and he was from Munkach, and of course he was Hungarian, and he was a good friend of my father, and he also made Aliyah, and in the camp he made a school, a yeshiva for little children, and he got a rabbinical offer in Afridar, when Netanya opened a new neighborhood in Netanya called Afridar. He became the rabbi of Afridar, and because my father was such a good friend of his, we came to visit him many times. He took my sister and myself, and we came to visit him. And when I got married, he made the blessing in my wedding. As things went along, and I told you there was a big birth rate in 1947 and in 48, but unfortunately in 1947 toward the end, people noticed that too many babies are passing away, so they wanted to find out why. Some babies passed away because the mother didn't have enough vitamins, but most of the babies, there was a German nurse who pressed down on their fontanel, and she killed those babies. And my father, of course, reported her to the government, and she was judged, and she was put in prison for a very, very long time. And so I know a friend of mine, Gina, whose mother was afraid. She was pregnant, and she was afraid to give birth in the camp, so she went out to Passau to give the birth to her daughter, and her daughter wrote about it a book. And she made a film about it. In my father, I don't know how he had the strength, but can I have that picture? But when the first thing that he did, and he thought that was his work, is to take out from the piles of dead people, to put each one of them in a different coffin. And he asked the American people to give him Nazis to take out the Jewish people from their coffins, from their piles of dead, and put them in their coffins. And this is the picture, and that was what the Americans did because my father asked for it. So this is a picture of the people that did the prayers over our Jewish people, and this is Mordechai Stern, who my father was his uncle, and he was a cantor, and later he was a cantor in Brussels and in Antwerpen, and he made the prayers over the dead people that were buried in a pile of people and then put into individual coffins. And here you can see the people came to honor those people that were in a pile and made the prayers over them. Once my father buried the Jewish people, he knew that there was he knew because he was there that there was a pile of non-Jewish people, and he told a priest in Poking, please come and make a prayer for your people. And that's what the priest did. He came after my father was in Auschwitz, and he was in the march of the death, and he was almost dead in Poking. He still had the humanity of burying the non-Jews. And he called the priest and he said, make a prayer and bury your non-Jewish people. And here are some of the coffins that you see, and that he's burying the people. And here is more pictures of it. And this is a picture of the Jewish burial in the coffins, and here is the burial of the non-Jews, and this is when they buried the Jewish people, you can see that they had made an honor guard, and some people put on their Auschwitz uniforms and came to the burial with their uniforms to honor the people. Already in 1946, my father said, I'm going to build a memorial to the people that died in Germany and to the Holocaust. And that's what he did. He wrote Adenauer, who was at the time the head of his party, and he asked him to give him big, huge stones because my father couldn't find them, and Adenauer sent him big, huge stones. And here is the building of the monument. These are pictures of the building of the monument. He sent my father the huge stones for the bottom of the memorial, and the other stones my father bought, and then this is the end of the monument, which you can see on top. It looks like smoke comes out from the chimney, and somebody carved dead people on the obelisk. The obelisk, I'll show you a picture of the whole obelisk. Let me see where I have it. Don't I have a picture of the whole obelisk? Ah, okay. Here is a picture of the whole obelisk, And here you see the big, huge stones that are bigger than the people themselves. There are huge stones all over, and on that in the middle is the obelisk. And this is on the obelisk was done in 1947, and this is the march to the obelisk from the DP camp. And here is another picture of all the important people that came to honor the obelisk at the dedication. And here is an honor guard and for the obelisk, and we have just a minute. This is the march to the obelisk with Dr. Philip Auerbach, my father, a person from the Americans, and a person from the Bundestag from Germany. And Philip Auerbach was appointed by the Bundestag to help all the camps in Germany and support the camps in Germany. That was his job. And here is children from the camp going out to memorialize the obelisk. And you can see that these are original pictures that were taken by a German photographer, and these are all original pictures. Here is my father speaking at the obelisk, and his words were, "This is a memorial to the people that passed away in Poking and in Germany and in the whole world." So he dedicated it to the Auschwitz, to the people that passed away in Auschwitz and in all the camps, and to the Holocaust. It's part of the Holocaust Memorial. And this dedication was in 1947. Here are the people honoring the obelisk, and I should have a picture with here. The people from the camps put on again their Auschwitz uniform to honor the people that were buried next to the obelisk, and a memorial to the Holocaust and to the people that passed away in Poking. In 1947, of course, all the Americans that came and saved my father and saved the people in Poking, saved the people in Poking, they were of course there, but in 2000, in 19, I should write down. In 1977, the German government talked to me and asked me to come because they want to rededicate the monument in Germany. And so I asked my sister to come with me. She couldn't make it at that time. So I took my younger brother that was born already in Israel, and he came with me to Germany to rededicate the obelisk. The idea of the first commemoration was the German government together with Anna Rasmus. This is Anna Rasmus. And she wrote a book about the people in Germany before the war, during the war, and after the war. And she was an outcast of the Poking people, and she couldn't live there anymore because they hated her so much, because she wrote the truth about them. But before she put it in a book, before she put it in a book, she went around the world. People, she was already very famous. She was called the Nasty Girl, and if you want, you can still find the movie in the movie stores, and you can take it, and it's called The Nasty Girl, about the book and about what she found out and how the people behaved to her in Germany. And she wrote a manuscript, and she wanted to find my father.
A book.
She wanted to find my father, but what did she do? Every time she opened a Holocaust museum and she spoke, her last words were, do any one of you know Rabbi Yehuda Lipot Meisels, who was in Germany after the war, who was in Auschwitz? Do you know anything about him? I want to send him my manuscript, and I want to make sure that what I wrote was correct. And so she went around the world, and nobody knew about him. But finally, she opened the Museum of Holocaust in Houston, Texas. And in Houston, Texas, she's finished her words with the same thing. Do you know Rabbi Yehuda Lipot Meisels? And as she went to the airport to leave, the next day, Sidney Schachmeister, who lived in Houston, read in the paper that last night Anna Rasmus asked for Lipot Meisels, and of course he knew him. They were friends, and he came every year to Israel. Here is Sidney Schachmeister after the war with his wife and 2 children. Of course, when he saved my father, he was a single boy, and he was 18 years old, 19 years old, and all their lives they were very good friends until my father passed away, and Sidney Schachmeister passed away after my father. Of course, he was much younger than my father. And this is the picture of the first commemoration of the obelisk. And here is Anna Rasmus. So Sidney Schachmeister called her up. She was at the airport, and he told her, I know Rabbi Meisels, and he's a friend of mine. And so she threw down her suitcase, she left it in the airport, and she went to him, and they talked, and he said, he gave her, I at the time was in Dallas, Texas, and he gave her my phone number to talk to me, and she right away in front of him talked to me, and she said, I'm looking for your father, can you give me his phone number? I would like to ask him to read the manuscript I wrote. I said, of course, I'll be happy to do that. And that's what she did, and she sent him the manuscript, and my father made notes on. He read it all, and all was fine. He just made a few notes on it to tell her how to write it. And my father went to synagogue that morning, and then he went to the post office. He came home, he sat down on his comfortable chair, and he passed away. So that was a full circle. And here is the book that Anna Erasmus wrote, and I'll show you wow, I had here here is the picture that she put into her book about my father, how the Americans saved him. Now, all those Americans that were and saved my father, and the people, and the Jewish people, and the non-Jewish people in the camp, came for 10 of the soldiers came for the first rededication of the monument, and here is Anna Rasmus, my brother, myself, and a person from UNRWA, which we were in touch all the time. He was an American citizen, and he was a חשבונאי,
like accountant?
An accountant. He was an accountant, and he was a friend of the family. Now we rededicated the monument. We rededicated the monument a second time in 2005, when we put behind the obelisk, we put a monument to the grave of the children that I was talking about, that passed. The children I was talking about that passed in the camp, and we dedicated that children monument with the children monument, and it says here, Jüdische Kinder zum Gedenken, Jewish children to be remembered. And that was a very emotional thing. And again, 5 soldiers came to the memorial, and I asked them, why are you coming? So they said, because we are honoring your father and what he did in the camps. So I told them, I really have to speak to my government, to the army, and get you medals for not only saving my father and saving all the Jews in the DP camp, in the camp, and of course in other camps. I'm going to get you a certificate, and I didn't know how I'm going to do it, but I did it, and they got a certificate, and I brought to America 5 certificates, but between the getting the certificate just before Robert Patton died, so he couldn't receive it anymore, but his children came and they received it for him. In here we have Maynard Hansen, and he put on his army uniform to get his medal from the army, to get his certificate from the army, and the certificate of the army was signed by the Ramatkal, who was at the time, shoot, I should have written down the name. The Ramatkal that signed the certificate not only said, I'm going to give them a certificate, but he also gave them a medal that only the Jewish soldiers receive for their bravery. And he gave them the certificate and the medals. And the person that gave it to them was Council Amir Ofek, and it was done in the Jewish Museum in New York. So they all traveled to New York to receive their certificates and medals.
Miriam, I want to ask you, the whole episode, if we can call it, but the whole DP camp, it is such an integral and important part of the Holocaust and how the Jews revived and they rose from the ashes and they rebuilt their lives.
Right. And as I told you, lots of emissaries came from Israel who helped out, especially the young children, and they taught them Hebrew, and the young adults, they taught army, all kind of army exercise. And at the end, most of the people from the camp, which was my father's wish, to go up and make Aliyah to Israel. Some of them already made Aliyah in 1948. So, the young people came to Israel to fight with the army, to fight for Israel and to establish a land, because they wanted a safe place to be in. And unfortunately, many of them passed away, many of them were killed during the war, and some of them were the last remnant of their families, and some of them we don't even know their names. And it's very sad. The young people that were born in Israel and were from the kibbutzim and the moshavim, they sent them out with singing and good wishes. And these young people came from the most horrible places in Germany and rehabilitated themselves. And they came to Israel, and they hardly, the army hardly gave them any. They wanted them to fight because they needed fighters, and they gave them a few revolvers, and they hardly taught them how to use it, and they sent them out to fight without any song and dance. But those people did it with all their love, and they fought for Israel, and many of them died for Israel, and we really have to remember them and honor them. And now the army is finally doing something about it, and that makes me very happy. In Israel, there were 600,000 Jews living, and about 600,000 Jews came from all over the world to live in Israel. So we really, I always tell my people when I speak to them, when I speak to Holocaust survivors, I always clap for them and I tell them, clap for yourselves, and because you built Israel, you built it with your hands, with your mind, with everything that you could, and you established wonderful families, and this is our reward, and this is the thing that we are most proudly of. Thank you.
So Miriam, I just want to thank you personally, and Miriam, I am so incredibly grateful to you.
Oh, sure.
I really am.
I am.
There are no words to thank you, Miriam. And Miriam, just seeing this picture of your father,
Yeah.
I think on a heap of bodies, and the miracle that his head was up, it's just miracles. It's
miracle.
incredible, and that
Otherwise
they say
he
that
would
he was
have
saved.
died. Right.
But not only is this the most incredible miracle, the most amazing photo,
Yeah.
what your father achieved
Right.
and what your mother achieved.
And this is yeah, and this is written by Sidney Schachmeister. He wrote here, Yom Ha'acharon b'Machane Poking, the last day in the camp of Poking, 1945. That Sidney Schachmeister wrote it.
But what your father, how he not only rehabilitated himself, but how he rehabilitated the whole camp.
Right.
And he
Right.
set such an example for everyone.
Correct.
I think the story of your parent, your mother as well, how she saved you and your sister in Budapest.
She saved us twice.
She put you in a dustbin with a cushions covering, and that saved your lives. Your parents were amazing heroes,
Correct.
and it is just the most unbelievable story. Not only story, but what you went through and your parents is such an example for all of us. It's something that we admire, and
what I really would like the people to know and understand is the chosen, the how do you say chosen in English? Is the inner strength
Within
of
the
a person. That it was unbelievable to see these people come with their numbers, come like no people should be seen like that, all thin and hardly could walk, and they rehabilitated themselves and had children and had wonderful families. That's a miracle.
And I just want to mention, Miriam, that your father, when he asked the priest to honor the dead, the Christian dead, he didn't have revenge. He didn't have.
No.
His life
No.
was filled with compassion and with.
Correct.
And I think that is such an incredible example, such an amazing attribute.
I think that's what he wanted to show the world. That's what's important. And the fact that he built the obelisk, and it sits there in middle of Germany, middle of Bavaria, where Eichmann used to live. Not far from there, Eichmann used to live. And people come, and when they go on the highway, they see the obelisk.
That's amazing. Well, Miriam, there are no words to thank you, and I'm incredibly grateful to you.
Thank you. I appreciate it very much.